There is a deeply painful truth that each of us will likely experience at least once, the feeling that the person we love is quietly and cruelly stepping away from us. Not through arguments, not through a clear goodbye, but through small, accumulated moments of indifference. You begin to notice the prolonged silences, the increasingly shallow conversations, the once warm gazes now passing over you as if you were merely a distant acquaintance. The scariest part is that they're still there, in the same house, at the same dining table, in the same bed, yet their soul has left without you realizing it. Love doesn't disappear overnight. It withdraws little by little, leaving behind subtle signs, and if you're sensitive enough, you will feel it. Maybe they no longer ask if you slept well, no longer remember your favorite dish, no longer see the sadness in your eyes. These signs are not meant to cause blame or deepen your pain, but to help you understand the relationship either needs healing or a conscious letting go. In today's video, we will explore the first 5 signs that your partner may be emotionally withdrawing, not to plant doubt, but so that you can recognize, face, and choose your next steps with clarity and self-respect. If you've been feeling like something in your love isn't what it used to be, then perhaps it's time to reflect before you walk away. Because the truth, no matter how painful, can also be the beginning of a healing journey. 1. The loss of curiosity when their eyes no longer follow you like before. There is a seemingly small yet profoundly telling sign in a fading relationship, the disappearance of curiosity. No more questions like, "How was your day? Anything new at work?" Or "Want to go somewhere this weekend?" Replaced instead by silence, indifference, or perfunctory responses. In the early years of a relationship, curiosity is one of the clearest signs of connection. People become curious about the smallest details of the one they love, their habits, emotions, dreams, even their quirky preferences. They want to hear you talk about the strange dream you had last night, the conflicts at work, or your thoughts on a movie. Not because the content matters, but because you matter. But when that curiosity fades, it's often not because they're too busy, but because they've begun to withdraw emotionally. Psychologists call this emotional disengagement, a state where someone is physically present in the relationship, but their mind and heart are no longer there with you. A study from the University of California found that among couples experiencing emotional distance, 72% admitted they no longer paid much attention to the small details of their partner's life. This doesn't just make you feel ignored, it makes you question your own worth. When caring questions disappear, you begin to feel invisible, as if your presence no longer holds any appeal, no longer plays a meaningful part in their world. Don't rush to blame yourself. This isn't your fault. It's a clear signal that the relationship needs to be reawakened, needs honest conversation. Because in lasting love, people remain curious about each other, not because they don't know, but because they always want to understand more deeply. If you realize your partner no longer asks how you're feeling, no longer remembers your friends' birthdays, or no longer listens when you share what makes you happy, that's not just laziness in communication. It's a quiet warning that their heart is drifting away from connection with you. Reflect on the last time you truly felt seen, not just with their eyes, but with their attention and respect. And if you find the distance widening, it may be time for an honest conversation, not to assign blame, but to understand. Where do we stand in each other's hearts? And is there still a path back? 2. Decreased patience. When even the smallest things start to annoy them. When people are in love, they can laugh at even the silliest things. A clumsy habit, a repeated story, or a differing opinion becomes an opportunity for understanding and forgiveness. But when a relationship begins to crack, things that were once accepted, even cherished, suddenly become seeds of irritation. You may notice them sighing when you speak, giving curt responses when you tell a story, or quietly leaving the room in the middle of a conversation. You begin to hold back your true feelings, telling yourself, "I'll just stay quiet to avoid conflict." And just like that, every time you speak feels like walking on eggshells. One small misstep could shatter an already fragile atmosphere. Marriage therapists refer to this as emotional fatigue, a state where a person becomes too emotionally drained to maintain politeness. let alone kindness. They don't want to listen because they think it's the same old stuff or believe saying it won't change anything. This kind of wariness doesn't just kill conversations. It slowly suffocates the emotional connection between two people. According to a 2022 survey by the Gottman Institute, a leading U.S. Center for Marital Research, 64% of couples identified lack of patience and frequent irritability as the first sign of emotional fading. This typically occurs after a long period of poor communication, when differences are no longer addressed but instead left to silently build up. And perhaps the most heartbreaking part is that the one enduring this impatience is often the one who still loves. They bite their tongue, try to adjust themselves, hoping, things will get better if I just behave. But you weren't born to tiptoe through your own life. You are not obligated to sacrifice your self-respect just to preserve the appearance of a relationship that has already grown cold. Unjustified irritability, cold replies, avoiding eye contact. These are all warning bells. Not to make you angry, but to make you ask yourself, am I still truly welcome in their heart? If you've grown used to reading their mood before speaking, if you're constantly exhausted from having to gauge the temperature, then perhaps the thing that needs to change isn't you. It's the way both of you perceive each other's presence in the relationship. 3. Lack of shared time. When living under the same roof, no longer means sharing the same world. There is a quiet kind of loneliness in love, the kind that happens when you still live together, still share meals, still hear those familiar footsteps every evening, yet feel like you're living in two parallel worlds that no longer intersect. The moments once filled with laughter now pass in silence, each person staring at their own screen, doing their own tasks, thinking their own thoughts, and avoiding even the simplest joys that used to bring you closer. At some point in a marriage, people often point to being busy, under pressure, or needing space as reasons for spending less time together. But when this continues, when there are no more shared dinners, no more evening walks, or even no more watching a show together, it's not just about changing routines. It's a sign that the emotional bond is quietly withdrawing. Family therapists have noted that a lack of quality time is one of the leading causes of emotional distance in long-term relationships. A study from the University of Michigan found that couples who consistently engage in at least one meaningful shared activity per week, such as cooking together, doing light exercise, or going for walks, are 40% more likely to maintain a long-term emotional connection than those with little interaction. Not making time for each other is the fastest way to fade from significance in each other's lives. When they always have time for work, friends, phones, pets, but not for you, it's no longer a matter of time, but a matter of choice. And what's truly heartbreaking is realizing that even though you're physically with them every day, you still feel as if you're living alone. You start creating your own little joys, trying not to bother them, and even hesitate to suggest activities you used to enjoy together. At that point, the relationship stops being a source of support and becomes an empty space, where you're forced to grow accustomed to the absence of someone who is still right there. Love needs to be nourished through presence, both physical and emotional. If you feel that your moments together are becoming rare, if you find yourself talking more to the walls than to your partner, then it's time to sound the alarm for your relationship. Because if nothing changes, all that may remain is a memory of what once was. 4. Hiding emotions. When their heart becomes forbidden territory. One of the clearest signs of emotional distance in love doesn't come through words. It comes through silence. Not the peaceful silence of two people who understand each other, but the kind that makes you feel shut out from the inner world of the one you love. When someone still loves, they share both joy and sorrow. They don't hide things from you, whether it's a tiring day at work, a strange dream, or an unformed emotion. But when they begin to shut down emotionally, you'll notice they no longer share those things with you. All that remains are perfunctory nods, vague replies like, "It's nothing," or simply a cold wall that separates two people who were once close. Marriage psychologists call this phenomenon emotional cutoff. When a person stops expressing emotions because they no longer feel safe or no longer see the need to do so. This not only creates a lack of connection in the relationship, but also a painful sense of isolation within the very relationship itself. According to a survey by the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, nearly 68% of people in failing relationships reported that they no longer knew what their partner was thinking or feeling before the breakup occurred. You begin to feel like a guest in their life story. No more conversations about work. No more sharing of dreams, worries, or future plans. Instead, there's avoidance, guardedness, even a sense that they're hiding something, not necessarily betrayal, but perhaps simply the loss of trust that once allowed openness. In healthy relationships, emotional sharing isn't a duty. It's natural. People confide in each other, not out of obligation, but because they feel heard and understood. But when you become the last to know, when you hear about their life through someone else, or are left guessing their emotions through their behavior, then love is no longer a place of trust. Don't let the silence linger so long that you forget what you deserve. A relationship where two hearts still seek each other, not to fill a void, but to be seen, to be felt, and to be deeply understood. 5. Physical withdrawal. When their body no longer reaches for you, naturally in any loving relationship, physical touch, a hand held, a hug, a tender gaze, is a language that transcends words. It is how people connect on the deepest level. Emotions through skin, closeness through gestures. But when love begins to fade, the first thing to disappear is often this intimate contact. You may notice that they no longer instinctively hug you when you're sad. They no longer rest a hand on your shoulder in passing. They no longer want to sit close, brush against you, or give you those spontaneous kisses they once did. In place of those gestures is an invisible avoidance, a physical distance that mirrors the emotional one. For many, this change can be mistaken for age, fatigue, or stress. But marriage therapists have pointed out that physical withdrawal, when not caused by health issues, is often a deep reflection of emotional withdrawal. A study from Harvard Medical School found that couples who maintained daily affectionate gestures, such as hugging, holding hands, or sitting near each other, reported 68% higher relationship satisfaction than those who didn't. When physical touch fades, you don't just lose the sense of closeness. You lose the feeling of being loved. The human body remembers the warmth of a loved one, and when that warmth is gone, you begin to feel like an outsider. You might lie next to them, yet feel cold. You might speak to them, yet feel distant. This can lead you to question yourself. Am I no longer attractive? Did I do something to make them lose interest? But the truth isn't in your appearance. Because when hearts are still connected, even a wrinkle is beautiful. And when hearts have grown cold, even perfection cannot bring back warmth. Love doesn't always have to be fiery, but it needs to be present. In the eyes, in the hands, in the subtle, meaningful touches. If you feel like you're becoming a stranger who can still be touched in your own relationship, then perhaps it's time to ask a question. Not just to them, but to yourself. Am I still being loved in the way I truly deserve? When someone no longer loves you the way they once did, they rarely say it out loud. They won't tell you, I don't love you anymore, yet you can still feel it. In the way they avoid your gaze, in the prolonged silences, in the coldness of their touch, or in the invisible distance that fills every room you share. These subtle signs, though small, are the clearest whispers that the love is no longer whole. Be honest with yourself. Are you feeling lonely in your current relationship? Do you constantly have to guess what they're thinking? Wonder if today they'll be upset, or decide to stay silent just to keep the peace? If you're living in a constant state of tension, tiptoeing around, or experiencing the absence of your true presence, then what you have is no longer love, but a strained form of coexistence. The deepest pain doesn't come from someone leaving you. It comes from them staying, but their love is no longer staying with them. They remain like a habit, a responsibility, a shadow, not the person who once made your heart race. And you, despite your efforts to keep the warmth alive, are slowly burning out, questioning yourself, and forgetting what you once deserved in love. Many don't dare to walk away from a love that has grown cold, not because they don't see the signs, but because they fear loneliness, fear change, fear starting over. But the truth is, feeling lonely within a relationship is far more frightening than being alone. And starting over, at any age, is never too late if it brings you peace, self-respect, and renewed belief in true love. Love should not be something that hurts you every day. It should not be a place where you have to shrink yourself, guess every word, or fight just to exist. If you realize you're in a relationship where the cracks are clear, then please remember this. You have the right to be loved fully, clearly, and completely. Whether you choose to stay or walk a different path, the most important thing is to never lose yourself in the process of seeking and preserving love.